Good morning, everybody. How are you doing today? It's good to see you folks. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Site 241, and thank you for all the well wishings. Good to see everybody here today. Kenzie, Karita, Jay, Etta, Leanne, and all the other people who appear to be logged in who haven't said hello yet. It's good to see everybody. Welcome back. I hope you had a good weekend. We are now in week 3 of the semester. Remember, the first midterm exam is next weekend. That's the weekend after week 4. So it's coming up, and I hope everybody's getting ready for that exam. How are your classes doing? Hi, Maddie. It's good to see you. Everybody's class is going well, I hope. Any problems, any questions, anything I can help with? I know, right? We'll be done with this semester before you know it, Leanne. All you have to do is hang on and pass all your classes, and you'll be one more semester closer to graduation. Remember, it's 8 semesters, and all you have to do is just pass them. Stephanie, hello, Stephanie. Good to see you. Do you know what will happen if you do nothing but make C's for the next 2 years, Leanne? You will get your degree, right? Now, we want to make A's and B's if we can, but just remember, C gets the job done. And what we want to do is we want to make sure we finish our degree one way or the other. And each semester is going to get a little tougher than the one before as you move up and take more difficult classes. But don't lose hope, Leanne, and just keep struggling, keep struggling. It's good to see you as well. Hi, Lane. How's it going? Hola, my amigo. It's good to see you. My perfectionist self is wanting to kill me. Right. You know what? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You want to make good grades where you can, but you just want to make grades. In the end, that's really what you want to do. You just want to pass through and get this degree. Looks like we've got 8 people here today. Let's go ahead and get started with Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is all about prenatal development. Today we're going to talk about the biology of prenatal development. Again, I am not a biology teacher, so I'm going to do the best I can. You folks give me a break. And then we are going to talk a little bit about the birthing process on Wednesday. So prenatal development today, birthing process on Wednesday. And then next week, we are finally going to start talking about little babies. Finally going to talk about babies. Okay. There you go. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate you sending out the warm thoughts to Leanne. That's very nice of you. I appreciate that. Remember, folks, it helps if you keep each other positive. So some days you'll need the help. Some days you'll have the ability to help somebody else. Remember, we're all in this together, and all we want to do is make sure we all get through this semester, right? Therapy is going really well for me so far. I've had my 4th radiation today, and I had my 2nd chemo tomorrow. So far, no ill effects, and I'm feeling okay. My throat's a little scratchy, but I've got my hot chocolate here, and hopefully that's going to get me through the next 45 minutes. Yep. Okay. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about the three periods of prenatal development today and what occurs in each. We're going to talk about the structure and purpose of the placenta, the basics of prenatal brain development, and we're going to talk a little bit about teratogens and the factors that determine how serious their effects are. I know hot cocoa is typically I'm a coffee kind of guy. I don't like to splurge on the calories with hot cocoa, but you know what? It's a tough semester, so I'm going to treat myself nice with a little bit of hot cocoa. And you should do the same, too, if you feel the need. Oh, my goodness, we've got Famata here. Hello, Famata. I did not see you in the chat bar. I am sorry. I didn't mean to miss that. Hold on, I've got a text coming in here. I'm having trouble, but it's causing problems. Somebody try the link? Make sure the link I sent out and remind is good. It might be user error, AJ, or not AJ. Oh my goodness, Davida. I'm sorry. I know, right? We all can get in bad spots, Leanne. So you gotta You gotta just help each other where you can. The link works. Okay, let me take it. I'm gonna say try again. If not, go to lessons. Hopefully she'll be here. The link in Blackboard is to last week's lesson. Oh shoot, that might be my problem. You got to be kidding me. The link is to last week's lesson? You're serious. Credola, credola, credola. You got to be kidding me. Okay, it works. Never mind. We're in and I'll fix that afterwards. I'm sorry, I am king of the typos, so I'm going to make as many mistakes as I get things right. I do apologize. I'm doing all of this on the fly, and sometimes I do a great job. Sometimes I don't do a great job. It looks like Davida is in, so it went to a recorded one already. Okay, sorry about that. I will fix that. Shit. Sorry, folks. All right, so we're going to talk about prenatal development, the beginning of the human developmental story. Prenatal development is the first part of the human developmental story, typically lasts anywhere from 38 to 40 weeks, and is divided into 3 periods. The germinal period, which is the first 2 weeks, the embryonic period, which is from the 2nd to 8th week, and the fetal period, which is from 2 to 9 months. And specific things happen in each of these 3 periods that we are going to go over in a little bit more detail. Ha ha, you're right. It wouldn't be Dr. Roddenberry if we didn't have typos. I apologize, I swear. Thank you for being such good sports about Dr. Roddenberry's typo. And I am definitely going to check that, Leanne, afterwards to make sure that I've got the right lecture for you. So, germinal period. So what we're going to call the baby at this point is we're going to call it a zygote. Okay, we're going to call it a zygote. And this is the first 2 weeks after conception. And this is when the fertilized egg cell, the zygote, floats down the fallopian tube and implants into the uterine wall. And so this is sort of the first 2 weeks of prenatal development. The zygote begins specializing. The cells in the zygote begin specializing into different tasks. It turns into a blastocyst and a crud. I am so sorry. I wonder if I should I go fix that now? I can fix that right now. Hold on. Crud. Give me just a minute, folks, because I don't want to catch somebody else. I don't know how that happened. And I have to do 30 of them. Come on, log in. My first name, 115. Let's see, developmental. I'm going to fix that. Watch this. Just in 2 seconds, Dr. Roddenberry fixes his silly mistakes. I thought I checked it. I really did. Let's see. Da-da. Click there. Click there. And yep. Okay, fantastic. I fixed that. Sorry about that, Crystal. Leanne caught me up. And, well, I don't know. You may be crazy, Crystal. I'm not going to make any statement about that. But that wasn't your mistake. But you still probably are crazy. Okay. Well, let's go ahead. So we have this zygote floating down the uterine wall. A zygote is a fertilized, sex cell. The sperm and the ova come together. It floats down and it begins to differentiate into a blastocyst, which is the inner layers of the cells that develop into the embryo, and then the trophoblast, which is the outer layer of cells that's going to turn into the placenta and the amniotic sac that are going to provide nutrition and support for the embryo. Hi, Ashley. I see you showed up. It's good to see you as well. It's good to see everybody here today. All right, so that's the first 2 weeks. Now, once the development of the neural tube begins, we don't call it a zygote anymore. We now call it an embryo. And in this developing human being goes into what we call the embryonic period. This occurs from 2 to 8 weeks after conception, and this mass of cells is now called an embryo. 3 major events occur during this period, include the development of the neural tube, which is the beginning of the nervous system, the development of these support structures, the placenta and the umbilical cord, and the cell differentiation and organogenesis. And organogenesis is when all of the organs of the human being begin to develop, from legs and arms to brains, digestive system, heart, and all of the systems begin to develop. And if you look at this human embryo in the picture right here beside me, you'll see that it's already pretty much humanoid looking. Now, it's a crazy, monstrous looking human being, but you can see the arms, you can see the legs, you can see the eyes, the brain, the mouth, and all of the systems have begun to develop. The beginning of the nervous system does signal the onset of the embryonic period. And let's see, the development of the support structures, the umbilical cord and the placenta. Now, the cell differentiation of the blastocyst continues, and the blastocyst develops into 3 different layers of cells: the endoderm, the mesoderm, and the ectoderm. The endoderm is going to become the digestive and respiratory system. The mesoderm is going to become the circulatory system, the bones, the muscles, and the sex organs. And the ectoderm, the outside, is going to become the skin and the nervous system. All organ systems begin to form during this period. Now, they do not finish during this period, but they begin to develop. So this is the period when the embryo differentiates from just a mass of cells into all the different systems that will eventually become the full, mature human being. Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, wow, Crystal, this looks just like you. Holy cow, I can see the eyes, I can tell, right? That is kind of funny. I do remember people saying that when I took the sonogram. Oh my goodness, he's got his dad's head or his dad's nose. That is kind of a funny thing that we do say. Oh, hi, Doug. I see that you're now in here with your cowboy hat. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the placenta and the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord is the connection between mom and the baby. It contains 2 arteries and one vein, and it connects the baby to the placenta, which is the disc-shaped group of tissues in which small blood vessels, capillaries from the mother and fetus intertwine but do not join. Now, important point here. The mother's blood and the baby's blood does not mix. Their little capillaries run side by side, but they do not mix. And this provides a level of protection for the baby called the maternal blood barrier. Okay? And what it does is, the 2 systems run side by side, and what happens is small, good molecules like salt, water, oxygen, those small models diffuse between the interstitial spaces, the spaces between the cells of the capillary, and diffuse from the mom's blood into the baby's blood, right? So the baby can get good stuff, nutrients from the mom because those nutrients just seep through the mother's blood vessels into the baby's blood vessels, which are running side by side. Okay, small molecules, water, salt, oxygen, and CO2 out of the baby and waste out of the baby. But what it does is these interstitial spaces are too small for larger molecules to seep through. And so these bad molecules, maybe if the mom is eating some foods or doing some things that put molecules into her body are not healthy for the baby, it keeps all of the bad stuff out of the baby while letting the baby and the mom transfer useful molecules in the placenta. All right? Now, the amniotic sac is a sac containing clear fluid in which the developing embryo floats. So the maternal blood barrier is the protective device that keeps the mom's bad behavior, hopefully, from impacting the baby. Now, you folks have all heard that you can't smoke cigarettes, you shouldn't drink alcohol, you shouldn't take some prescription drugs, and you should definitely stay away from bad drugs. And you know what? You might ask yourself, well, how do they harm the baby? Well, it turns out drugs that are teratogenic are those drugs that are small enough to diffuse through these capillaries. So drugs that can't diffuse through the capillaries are not teratogenic or damaging to the babies. But things that come from cigarette and alcohol and whatnot, those molecules can diffuse through this maternal blood barrier, and so they are dangerous. But the placenta and these non-touching blood systems sort of provides a layer of protection for the developing baby. If you think about it, the baby's got literally trillions of cells that need to be created and need to migrate to their proper place in order for that baby to develop normally. And these molecules, these cells have to do that according to a very specific plan. And so if you start getting molecules, external molecules into this system, it can cause birth defects and damage the developing baby. Hello, Violetta. It is good to see you today. Oh my goodness, Crystal Bishop. Yeah, I know. We were talking about having a baby over a certain age. Crystal, I swear to God, you look 21 to me, my dear. Let's talk a little bit about neural development, okay? The neural tube. This is the first sign that we are now in the embryonic stage. It's the early formation of the nervous system. It begins at 2 weeks, and it signifies that the baby is now in the embryonic stage. It develops from the ectoderm. I just laughed at Crystal's content there. Very cute. All right, so here's the deal. It first starts out as a neural groove. Then it turns into a neural tube, which has to close, right? If it doesn't, the baby has a neural tube defect. And it then develops into the nervous system. And as you can see, the picture underneath me, you see how we have the neural plate here, which is part of the ectoderm. It starts to get a groove in it. And then this groove folds over into what will become a spinal column in the back of the baby's brain. And you'll see the picture here below the little bean-looking structures kind of shows how this neural tube structure goes down and kind of wraps onto itself. I don't know how to properly show it like this. And that develops into the, turns into the nervous system. Failure of the neural tube to close may cause anencephaly or spina bifida, okay, which is, anencephaly is when the baby's brain doesn't develop, anencephaly, or spina bifida, which is a hole in the neural tube. Now, they tell you that you should begin taking folic acid as a preventative against neural tube defects. Now, if you think about it, this neural tube defects happens even before you know you're pregnant, really. So it's important, if you as a mother are thinking about getting pregnant, go ahead and get yourself on this folic acid as a preventative. Okay? Now, here's the deal. Your nervous system is composed of 80 to 100 billion neurons. Holy cow, that's a lot of neurons. And the crazy thing about these neurons is they're born, and then they migrate to the proper place in the nervous system. So think about neurons as developing along with there are three particular parts to this placement of 100 billion neurons. Each neuron is born. We call that neurogenesis. Each neuron then migrates using a chemical pathway to the appropriate place in the nervous system. Every neuron does this. And once that neuron gets to the appropriate place, it shoots out a route to the part of the nervous system that it connects to by sending a branch-like axon. You remember folks hearing about axons in Psych 150? So there's sort of, each neuron goes through three parts. It's born, it migrates to the proper place, and then once it gets to the proper place, it sends out a route because neurons connect to different parts of the nervous system and to the peripheral nervous system. Babies are born somewhere with between 20 and 100 billion neurons, and each and every one of these neurons has to go through this three-step process. Now we're going to talk about dendritic connections, the dendrites, but the dendritic connections really don't start until after birth. They are the postnatal part of your brain development. When you're born, you have all the neurons, you have all the brain structures that you need. The postnatal growth that we're going to talk about is the growth of myelin tissue and this dendritic spreading that occurs. And this all occurs after birth. And this process right here is it's driven by maturation. It's a nature-driven effect. Whereas some of the postnatal development that occurs in the brain is going to be nurture. Oh my goodness, Leanne's still a slide behind on notes. Well, you know what? You can watch this thing recorded, Leanne. I promise I got the recording right this time. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about organogenesis, which occurs during this embryonic period. All of your body systems will begin to develop during this period. Some will finish during this period, some will take longer, and your nervous system isn't fully developed until you're 25 years old. Holy cow, that's a long time, right? So if you look at the graph right underneath me, it kind of shows you an idea of sort of a schematic of how this happens. So you see the little pink, in the line graph, we have pink, yellow, green, and then sort of the taupe color here. The pink area is the oh my goodness, what period did I say that was? The germinal period. Okay, excuse me. Sorry, sometimes I forget things. Oh my God, what, the germinal period. So that's when you're a zygote. During the yellow period, you're an embryo, and this is the embryonic period. And you'll notice that we have sort of this sloping graph over the top of it that says organogenesis. And this shows you when the growth of all of these organs begins. And you see the majority of the growth actually occurs during this embryonic period. So the height of this graph shows you sort of the level of growth that's occurring. And you see all the systems that are developing. Now, each system has a period when it's most sensitive to teratogens, to bad things that the mother ingests into her system. And so, and it also has a total timeline when it's begins and when it's done. And so if you look at the line graph for each of these systems, you'll see there's one for the central nervous system, one for the heart, one for the ears, the eyes, the arms, the legs, the teeth, the palate, and the external genitalia. The line graph shows you when the item begins growing, the part begins growing, and when it is done. Now the central nervous system line is going to keep going, and it's going to keep going for another 25 years. But look at the heart. You'll notice that the heart begins developing at the end of week 3, and the heart is pretty much fully formed by the end of week 8. So from week 3 to week 8, the heart begins to develop and turns into its final shape, so to speak. Now, the red part of the line tells you when that developing system is most sensitive to bad things like cigarettes and alcohol and drugs that you might take. So that's when the system is most sensitive to teratogens or external factors. Now, teratogen exposure during the red stage may actually lead to malformation of the body part. So there was a thalidomide was a drug that was used briefly in the 1960s in Britain for moms suffering from morning sickness, and it turns out it was incredibly teratogenic. And if the mom took it, if you Google online, you'll see thalidomide babies, and you'll see babies whose body parts didn't even grow. So there are pictures of babies where their hands are actually coming from their arms, or maybe half of their arm developed, or maybe half of their legs developed. And this drug actually stopped the development of the organ so that it didn't even develop into its full structure. Now, teratogen exposure after that period is not as likely to damage the structure of the organ as it is to damage the functioning of the organ. So this picture right here sort of shows you the embryonic period and organogenesis occurring, and it demonstrates when these developing organs and systems are most sensitive to teratogenic exposure. Right, right, Crystal. I know it's honestly, when my wife was pregnant with both of our kids, it was the most neurotic and fearful time of my life because you're just sitting there for 9 months hoping that everything's turning out okay with your baby. You can do your prenatal diagnostic test like we talked about last week, but you don't know. You really don't know. And when your baby's born, I swear to God, I thought it was just a wives' tale. But when the baby was born, I literally did count those fingers and toes and look all around to make sure those babies came out right. It's totally scary, right? Okay, so let's talk about the fetal period. The fetal period is the third stage of prenatal growth, and this is the time when the baby grows. All the systems have developed. Some of them are going to be finishing. Some of them have already finished, but this is the time when the baby goes from teeny tiny to that 7-pound beautiful baby that you will see at 40 weeks. And so you'll see the little baby, the little embryo. I guess now it's called a fetus. In this period, after 8 weeks, it's called a fetus. You'll see this little fetus right here, which looks kind of baby-like, and it's less than 3/4 of a pound, and it's going to grow all the way to 7 pounds by week 40. The fetus has a chance of surviving outside the womb at about 6 months of development. However, I guarantee you, if you go online and Google hard enough, somebody has probably had a baby that's younger than that. But we typically think about 6 months as being the time when the baby really has a good chance of surviving outside of the womb. The baby's going to be really skinny until around 7 months, and that's when they're going to start packing on that baby fat to keep them warm and help them survive when they get outside of the feeding system that's built for them inside the womb. Now the baby's going to develop a fine hair that covers the body of them. It's called lanugo, and then they're going to have this really nasty, greasy protective covering on your child called vernix caseosa. When babies are born, babies do not look good, if I'm being honest, man. They're just covered with that goop, and the nurse has to clean them off after they're born. And so this is sort of what's going to be characteristic of the fetal period. Yeah, Kinsey does have a great idea. Why don't you just switch to a cat? Or actually, I take that back. You've got cats. Cat ownership. There you go. That's the key. Now, teratology is the study of the hazards to healthy prenatal development. You all have heard that you shouldn't smoke and you shouldn't drink while you're pregnant. That is because smoking and drinking are considered teratogens. Any agent or characteristic of the parents that can cause a birth defect or negatively alter cognitive and behavioral development is called a teratogen. And teratology is the study of the causes of birth effects, right? Now, negative effects of exposure during the embryonic period can actually lead to structural deformations, as I mentioned earlier. But negative effects of exposure during fetal period are going to stunt the growth. They're going to impact the fetal brain development, or they might cause functional problems in the organs. Okay? Now, is a teratogen going to hurt my baby? Well, it depends. It depends. Crazy story. I was born in 1969. Woohoo, summer of love. And my mom told me that when she went to the doctor for her prenatal appointments, her OBGYN, after they would do the appointments, she and the doctor would actually have a cigarette together. They would sit and have a cigarette and talk about my mom's impending pregnancy. Can you imagine that? And nothing's wrong with me. Maybe, right? But can you believe that moms would smoke back in the 60s because nobody knew at that point that it was teratogenic, that it could hurt your baby. So teratogens don't always lead to the damage. The damage actually depends on 3 particular qualities I'd like for you to be familiar with. Number 1, it's the dose. the amount of the teratogen. Number two, it's the timing of the exposure. Remember, I told you exposure in the embryonic period can actually mess up the structure. Exposure later may not be quite as harmful, and also the genetic susceptibility of the baby. So these three factors are what are important in determining how serious the effect of a teratogen, how serious an effect the teratogen has on the developing baby. Common teratogens you should know about. You folks have all heard about fetal alcohol syndrome disorders, and this occurs with mothers who drink alcohol, a lot of alcohol during pregnancy. Now they tell you not to drink at all. Fetal alcohol syndrome or cognitive effects can occur, they say, with any level of alcohol usage, but with heavy alcohol usage, the baby is sometimes born with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which is characterized by learning and behavioral problems. And kids born with fetal alcohol syndrome are going to have lots of behavioral problems as well, more likely to commit suicide, accidents, more likely to engage in risky behaviors that lead to alcohol poisoning or drug overdoses. Smoking, not a good thing for the mom to do. Smoking leads to low birth weight. And we're going to talk about low birth weight on Wednesday. And having a low birth weight actually has its own host of negative problems. And so smoking sometimes leads to low birth weight. It has been shown to be related to attention problems, impaired newborn brain development, and the likelihood that your baby will smoke as well. You know what? I spent 20 years smoking myself. Who knows? Maybe it related to the fact that my mom smoked cigarettes with the doctor when she was pregnant with me. I will tell you another secret. My mom actually let me have a puff on a cigarette when I was 6 years old. Her and my dad thought it was funny. Back in the 70s, man, people, when I had my first sip of beer at 6 and 7, my mom and dad and most people back then really didn't think about the harmful effects of cigarette smoking or alcohol usage. But you, as a parent here in the 21st century, should be aware of these problems and make sure to protect your kid from these teratogenic effects. Yeah, smoking, you know what? Smoking can have effects. You never know, Leanne. Yeah, I think all kids go through that period in their teenage years where they want to try something risky and dangerous, and smoking seems cool and vaping seems cool. And it was cool to me when I was 16 and 17 and 18, but I'll tell you, all through my 20s, I freaking hated it, and it became an anchor that hung around my neck. And when I finally did quit in the early 30s, I was happy that I was able to push it away. Now, I will tell you, one of the things that the doctors were very interested in with me during my cancer diagnosis, they were really bent out of shape that I smoked for 18 years as a young man. I smoked from, actually it wasn't even 18. I smoked from 16 to about 32, 16 years of smoking. And you know what? The doctors didn't care that I drank alcohol. They didn't care that I had smoked marijuana as a kid, but they kept talking about the cigarettes. And apparently smoking, even if you quit, is a huge, huge, huge risk factor and a problem for cancer later in your life. So if you can avoid it, Leanne, please, I would highly suggest you avoid the devil weed. Okay. Prescription drugs that can function as teratogens. Your doctor gives you lots of drugs that you take to cure illnesses and maladies that we all have. But you know what? You have to be careful, and I guarantee you when you get pregnant, your doctor is going to ask you about all of the medications that you could be on. Antibiotics, streptomycin, tetracycline, some antidepressants are teratogenic. They can lead to miscarriages, preterm birth, autism, spectral disorders, hormones like progestin and synthetic estrogen, some acne medications, and some oral contraceptives can be teratogenic. So be sure before you get pregnant to consult with your doctor, find out about your medications, and make sure you are not taking any medication that can be teratogenic. As I said, you're halfway through through organogenesis a lot of times before you, as a mother, are even aware that you are pregnant. And you know what? Diet pills, and they say aspirin in high doses can also be teratogenic as well. Okay, now not only are there drugs that you can ingest, but there are parental factors that also can lead to developmental problems in your baby. I don't know if any of you have heard of blood incompatibility. So there's this Rh factor on your blood. So you either have a positive factor or a negative factor. And the weird thing is, if you have a baby, if the mom is Rh negative and she has an Rh positive baby, okay, and her blood becomes sensitized during that pregnancy, her blood will develop antibodies that will attack the next baby if it comes with the Rh positive factor. So if your mom is Rh positive, if she has the positive factor, it is not a problem. She can have as many babies as she wants without that problem. But if a mom is Rh negative and she gives birth to a baby and they get that blood mixing, the mother may become sensitized and her immune system will attack the next baby if it is Rh positive. Now they do have a vaccine called Rogam, which is you're supposed to give to the mom within 3 days of the baby's first birth, and it prevents the creation of these antibodies. So keep that in mind on your homework this week. Environmental hazards, radiation, toxic waste, and other chemical pollutants, lead, any of those things can be teratogenic, even though you might not think about exposing yourself to them. Exposure can cause teratogenic effects. And then if the mom has certain sicknesses, rubella, syphilis, herpes, and AIDS, diabetes, if the mom's not eating well, like we said, lack of folic acid, or eating too much fish. I don't think they want you to eat that much fish when you're pregnant because the mercury can be teratogenic. Being overweight, maternal age over 35, and you know what? Even being stressed out and being a neurotic personality style can be teratogenic. Yep, sure enough, Etta. I guess my wife must have been Rh positive because the doctors never mentioned it to us. Now, paternal factors including sperm abnormalities from lead or radiation exposure may lead to miscarriage or diseases. So I guess now that I've had radiation therapy, it would not be good for me, or there would be a higher risk if my wife was to get pregnant. Oh my God, I'm 50 and she's 49, so there's no way in hell we're ever going to do that. But if I was crazy enough and wanted another kid at this age, that could potentially be a problem for me. And it turns out that this secondhand smoking that could occur from a father during the mother's pregnancy might also be teratogenic as well. Okay, that's all I have to say for today. Do you folks have any questions for me? No sushi. Stay away from the sushi. I have to admit, I just can't eat raw fish, man. There's something about the texture, so I don't have to worry about that. I don't know why or how some people choose to eat sushi. About every 6 months, I'll take my wife out to a place like that, and she'll ask me to try the sushi, and I'll be like, this is the time. This is the time. I'm ready for it. And I take one bite, and I just completely spit it out. Ugh. It's the seaweed gets you, right? I think I could eat the seaweed before I could eat the raw fish. So if nobody has any questions, I'm going to go ahead. Ooh, shrimp? Really? That's interesting. I like my seafood. I'm a southerner, so I like my seafood fried, cooked pretty well. Raw sushi. I can eat baked fish, don't love it, but definitely not the raw fish. Well, I don't have anything else to say. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me a text. I'm going to double check and make sure that I have the right lecture set up for Wednesday so we don't have any confusion. I do apologize for that. Don't forget to do your reading, because we are going to see each other Wednesday night and talk about some issues related to having babies. Fantastic. Thank you very much. It's great seeing everybody. Have a great day, and I will see you Wednesday. Bye.